Given the graph of the following parabola, write the equation in standard form. So we're given a graph of a parabola. It's an upward parabola, so we know it's going to be of the form y equals x squared. So y equals x squared. So what do we have here? We have a parabola, okay, and we're given on a nice graphing grid. And so we see that this point here, -3, y equals -3, and x equals 2. So there's an intersection here. There's our vertex. Our vertex, we know our vertex is at 2, -3. Okay? We know that. And we also know that the focus, here's the focus. So here's the focus, and it is 1 unit above the vertex. 1 unit above the vertex. And so we know P is equal to 1. Okay? And we also know, hopefully, that P is equal to 1 over 4A. And so I can take this equation right here and I can solve it for A. Okay? I can solve it for A. So I multiply by 4A, I get 4A equals 1, I divide by 4, and I get A equals 1/4. Okay? Boom, boom. So, from this information, and this information, I can write an equation to this graph. And that answer, that equation is going to be, move my camera just a little bit, right? We know the format that we're looking for is y equals A x minus h squared plus k. And we know that h and k denote the vertex. And then of course we know a is 1/4. So we can give our final answer here. Y equals 1/4 x. Now, a negative h value, right? X minus h. So if I put -2, -3, -5, we know that's moved to the right. Well, this moved to the right 2. So this will be -2 squared. And then it's been moved down 3. So this will be -3. Okay? And that is my final answer. So given the graph of a parabola with the vertex and the focus, that's how easy it is to write the equation in vertex form. Okay? Now, one boo-boo. So I wrote this, I put a box around it, I'm all happy with it. Vertex form. But the directions say standard form. So how would I turn this into standard form? And the answer, we'll take a different color here, is I would multiply this part here out. So x minus 2 squared is x squared minus 4x plus 4. Okay? And then that's going to be, move my camera just a little bit, times 1/4 and minus 3. So if I distribute this 1/4, we get x squared over 4 minus x plus 1 minus 3. And so our final answer, and these will all be y equals. These will all be y equals. And so our final answer in standard form will be y equals x squared over 4 minus x minus 2. So if they ask for it in standard form, that'd be our answer. Okay, so how to write the equation from a graph. A really useful thing, at least in some math classes, and also in some applications in engineering classes. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So find the vertex and the focus, and sketch the graph of this conic section. Okay, so y equals -1/2 x squared plus 3x minus 2. Find the vertex and the focus. So the first thing we need to do is put this in vertex form. And to do that, we've got to complete this square. So, and I know y equals -1/2 x squared. I know for a fact that that is a downward facing parabola. It's going to have a maximum. Okay, so when I graph this, in just a minute, I've got a graph grid down here on my paper. When I graph it, it's got to be a downward facing parabola or I know I've made a mistake. So how to complete the square? First, we've got to make this guy here equal to 1. So I'm going to multiply every single term in this equation by -2. So multiply him by -2, multiply him by -2, and multiply him by -2. So what do I end up with? I end up with -2y equals x squared, and then that's going to be minus 6x, and that's going to be plus 4. Okay? So then what? We move our constant term over, so we get -2y minus 4 equals x squared minus 6x. And now we complete the square. I always do this in a different color. I think it really helps bring things out. It helps us see what's going on. So I'll take my red pen here and I'll divide by 2. That's -3. I'll square that. That gives me plus 9. Plus 9. Okay. And then the last step for completing the square is to factor this guy. So I get -2y plus 5, right? Because minus 4 plus 9 is plus 5, equals, and we'll write this guy in factored form, so it'll be x minus 3 quantity squared. Okay? Now, we've got that done. What do we want to do next? Rearrange this to solve for y. So you move the 5 over. You get x minus 3 quantity squared minus 5, right? So move that over, it's minus 5. Then multiply every single term. Okay, every single term, or not multiply, divide by -2, or we could say multiply by 1/2, right? So -1/2 there, and -1/2 there, right? Dividing by 2, multiplying by -1/2 are the same thing. So we do that, and what do we end up with? We end up with, hopefully on the left-hand side, just y, because that's our whole purpose. Y equals -1/2 x minus 3 quantity squared, and the -5 times -1/2 is plus 5/2. Okay? Cool. So here is my equation in vertex form. Okay? So we found the vertex. The second thing they ask us to do is find the focus. So find the focus. Okay? Well, this is A. And we know that P equals 1 over 4A. Absolute value. Okay? So -1/2, right? So 4 times -1/2 is -2. 1 divided by -2 is -1/2. Take the absolute value and we get 1/2. P is 1/2. Well, if P is 1/2 and we know our parabola points down, here's the vertex and the focus will be down 1/2 unit. Okay? So if the vertex from this equation is 3, 5/2, 3, 5/2, and we're going to move down 1/2 unit, that's going to affect the y value. It's going to be minus 1/2. Well, 5/2 minus 1/2 is 4/2 or 2. So the focus is 3, 2. So that's our second thing that we were asked. So write the equation, done. Find the focus, done. And then sketch the graph. Sketch the graph, okay? So we know the focus is at 3, 5/2. And here's where you have to throw math out the window and use mixed numbers. 5/2 is 2.5. So we go over 3 and up 1, 2, and 1/2. And we're right here, okay? There is our vertex. Okay, our focus is at 3, 2, so we'll put that there. And then before we sketch this graph, we really kind of need a sense of where it goes. And so what I like to do is find the Y-intercept. Okay, find the Y-intercept. Well, the Y-intercept is where x equals 0. So if I plug in 0, 0 minus 3 is -3. -3 squared is +9. -1/2 times 9 is -9/2, which is -4.5. But we'll leave it as an improper fraction. -9/2 plus 5/2 makes -4/2. Well, -4/2 is right here, -2. That is my y-intercept. So if I go from here and we go down and over 3, then these things are symmetric. Here's your line of symmetry right here. Here's your line of symmetry. So if this is down to here and over 3, this down to here and over 1, 2, 3, that'll be the other side of this downward parabola. And we can kind of sketch our parabola. We can come up and go back down and pretend we hit that point because we're really, really good at graphing, right? Okay, so there's our parabola. Sketch, equation, and focus. And if they ask for the vertex, of course, you know the vertex is here, 3 5/2. Okay? If you have any questions about conic sections, parabolas, anything like that, let me know.